Saturday in Tryon, North Carolina, and we're going through a series of messages on how do you pick a leader. Initially, response was for picking leaders for the church, but we can see the application to picking leaders for our country, for our states, for our local government. And we've already seen, as we looked at the requirements that God has for spiritual leaders, they're the kind of guidelines that should bring about the picking of our government officials. Unfortunately, we find that many of those currently serving and those that could serve don't even come close to the requirements that God has for servants. Nevertheless, we're going to continue this study over some of the hot button issues, and the next one that I would like to address is immigration, both legal and illegal, and try to give you a perspective on how difficult it is for anyone to come to clear answers on taking care of this particular issue. The scripture verse that I'm using for this is 1 John 3, verse 4, which reads in part, everyone who practices sin also practices lawlessness. Lawlessness is sin. I think the part that, excuse me, part that's always bothered me about this is when we talk about illegal immigrants and then in the same breath act as if illegal is not illegal. Certainly when we look at fairness and justice, which we could have quoted several scriptures from the Bible, those that are waiting in line to come to the United States are done an injustice by the influx of illegal immigrants. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States today. Let me say that again for you. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. today. There are waiting through the legal processes literally thousands of people who would like to come to the United States but are trying to do it the right way through the right channels and with the right paperwork. And so the problem of immigration becomes at least threefold, probably more than that. But let me just point out three major issues. What do you do with the existing illegals? And you say, well, that's easy, just send them back to their countries. No, it's not that easy. Some of these people have been here for at least 2 generations, and there are innocent children who didn't make that decision to break the law and come into the United States. And they could easily wind up then separated from the rest of their family because of any decisions we might make about sending some back to their countries and some not back to their countries. Also, what kind of void would that put in our workforce in the fields and the farms where many of these illegals have gone and found places of work? Thirdly, could we possibly pay the cost of finding them, rounding them up, and getting them back to their own country? On the positive side, when you would send back illegals, in many cases you would send back those that have committed crimes, therefore bringing down some of the criminal rate. But you would also take a tremendous burden off the taxpayer because most of these illegals have found a way of getting around our systems and are taking advantage of our schools, taking advantage of our medical care, taking advantage of our social programs, so that they are a burden upon our economic part of our society. And many pay no taxes, therefore don't help in the cost of the existing illegals. So that's issue number one. What do you do with the existing illegals? Not a simple word explanation of just export them. Secondly, there's the potential terrorists. If we do not carefully check backgrounds, particularly of those people coming from countries or have a natural origin from countries that are against America and who have publicly stated that they want to undo America, we have this potential problem of importing or having illegally imported into the United States potential terrorists that can bring the battle to our own soils, to our own neighborhoods, to our own schools and systems. Not an easy thing to check the backgrounds of these people, particularly coming out of countries that have stated their purpose is to undo America. The third issue is economic impact. Many countries have recognized the tremendous impact. For example, in Denmark, they're actually offering cash incentives to those who will leave Denmark because they're not willing to assimilate into the country. They're not willing to contribute to the country and to become good Denmark citizens. Sweden has opened their doors to legal immigration, and they now have a serious unemployment problem because so many people have come to Sweden. United Kingdom and Japan also have kind of preferential treatment for bringing people into their countries. They recognize that their population is actually decreasing, and therefore they need professionals, and so they give more points to professionals coming from other countries than they would for poor that are perhaps even under oppression in the countries that they're in. Canada is having quite a problem, having opened their borders to try to bring in professionals because they're getting everything but professionals. And so this is not just a U.S. problem. This is a problem that is worldwide, and it's not a simple thing. So we have existing illegals, the problem's there. We have the potential terrorists. We have the economic impact. And we have known history now that many of the countries that took, particularly these that were fleeing some of the war-torn countries, they are having serious problems and disruptions within their countries, naming France and Germany as two of the biggest, but it's happening in England and other places as well. It's important for us to understand then that this is not a simple issue. So one of the reasons why you should read both the Democratic and the Republican platforms to see how they would deal with immigration. Don't just take blind words of where we're going to treat everybody fairly and that's that. Let them get into detail with you. If it's not in the platform, then ask some of these candidates and see if they'll give you a response on how they would deal with these three very tricky subjects of illegals existing, potential terrorists, and economic impact on America. To me personally, from the scripture standpoint about loving God with all your heart and with all your mind and all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself, we have an obligation to the less fortunate of this world. But is that obligation best fulfilled by bringing them here to the United States and impacting our own economy in an adverse way, and potentially bringing in undesirable citizens that would never pledge allegiance to the United States? In reality, they might say it lying, but they might also stay allegiant to their own countries and become troublesome as they have in other countries. My approach scripturally would be to go to these countries as, and I hate to say it because I was not a big fan of John F. Kennedy, but frankly, the Peace Corps and some of the organizations that he was trying to stimulate Americans to was really a good idea. To go to their countries, to help them to make their countries better, to show them how to till their land, how to make their land productive, how to become professionals, and help educate the people and allow them to stay in their own land, because many of them would rather stay in their own if they could have equal opportunity to what they would have in the United States. Well, I realize it's not a simple issue, and I realize that you need to take a look and you need to ask the candidates what kind of specific things would they do in each of these three categories: existing illegals, potential terrorists coming in, and the economic impact on America if we just bring in masses and masses of immigrants, whether legally or illegally. That's your thought for the day. Let's be good Christians. Let's think about what we can do to make this a better world, not just a better United States. Isn't it in those that could volunteer to go to these countries as our missionaries have, and to continue to try to help these countries become a good place, a safe place, a place of opportunity as America is? The answer is not everybody leaving their countries and coming to America. The answer is to try to make the other countries just as attractive to others as America is. And that says something for our system, doesn't it? That is what our system has been for the last couple hundred years, not potentially what it might become with some of the laws and regulations that are now being put in place. Our country is desirable to others because of what we've been for 200 years, not what we're becoming as new rules and regulations and new liberal thoughts are brought into place. Think about it. Read the platforms. Think about how you would handle these problems of immigration. It's your thought for the day. God bless you.